No, your channel didn't change to a kid's channel. No, these are my Legos, not my kids, so there. So what we're going to demonstrate is adding a new node to a linked list. And as you know, we're going to have a front pointer and we're going to have a rear pointer. Right now they're basically pointing to null because there's nothing in the list. So what happens when we add a new item to the list? Now remember, you've seen the overall setup of what should happen, but this is the step-by-step approach, let's put it that way. So I'm going to put this guy right here, and now we have to adjust the list to, frankly, mimic a completed linked list. So first, your front pointer is going to go ahead and point to the node. Your rear pointer is also going to point to that node as well. Now the node itself, by the way, is going to have data in it, and it's going to have a link as well. So you're going to see this little guy. I'm going to turn him down, and this arm right here, I'm going to have it facing to the ground so that you know it is facing null. Now that's going to change once I add somebody else. I'll do it this way, and their arm's going to be linking to, well, the person beside him. So that's the overall setup when it comes to adding our first node into a blank linked list. Now we're adding a new node in different spots in our already established linked list. So let's look at everything. You know this is going to be front pointer, you know this is going to be rear pointer, and you have all the nodes facing, or sorry, linking to one another, except for this last one. Notice it's pointing to the ground because it knows it's the last node in the linked list. But the rest of them are all pointing to the next node in the list, starting with the clown and going from there. So I'm going to add a new node. In this demonstration, I'm going to show you how we would add it to the end of the list, and then the other one I'm going to show it from the beginning of the list, and I got to make some changes here. So if I want to add this new node to the end of the list, you know physically it's going to be placed here. Well, first thing right off the bat, I don't really need to make room for it because remember it's dynamic memory, but I got to make some changes with the overall setup of the pointers. Now first, this is going to need to change, and that's the rear pointer. That's going to need to link eventually to our newest node that we added in there. So what are we going to do first? So this I'm going to use was originally pointing to our rear node here. I'm going to say, hey rear, this is the guy right now, it's a rear node. I'm going to have you point to the new node. Now it's pointing to the new node. Now I'm going to go ahead and shift and say, okay, whoever you're pointing to, I want you now to point to. That is our new rear pointer. And that's the setup, if you can believe that. Notice again, this node right off the bat that we put in has data in it, and we set its link down to null, which now makes sense. Linked, 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 end of the list, set to null. So that's how we would add a node to the end of a linked list. So now, how would we add a node to the beginning of the linked list? Now again, look at the picture for what we got here right now. We have front aiming to the front node, and then we have that node linking to this, linking to this, linking to this, and it says that's down because I'm at the end of the list. Our rear pointer is pointing to the last node. So the picture form here, we're in great shape. So how does that adjust after we put in our newest front node? So I'm going to move this again slightly here. I'm going to add this, and it's get blocked here, but this front pointer is still pointing to the original front node. So what do I got to do here? Well, there's a couple of changes this time when we're adding a node to the front of the list. First, you're going to say, well, move front pointer. Let's wait for that. So I want the new node to now link to the same thing that the front pointer is pointing to. That's step number one. So that's very different than adding at the end, because remember, it was just going to point to null because that's the end of the list. Now I go ahead and have my front pointer point to the newest member, which is insert, of our linked list. And notice the overall form again, from front to rear. Everything's pointing in the right direction. The last node is pointing down because it is the last node, and the front and rear are pointing to the right nodes.